that's, I think, one of the things that as a coach, I wish people would understand more is that you're not just doing these things for the immediate goal. You're not just learning these skills in order to land the next job. You're doing it in order to prep yourself for a long career, right?
Yeah.
This is a long game, not just a short game. And so it's kind of funny because you sort of work with the group that I don't work with so much. I work with like the people just breaking in, and then I work with the people who have been in the role for a long time and want to move up, but haven't done this like intermediate step that you work with people on. So it's kind of interesting where I sort of like I'm sort of seeing the people who are like, I've been in this role 2, 3 years, and now I want a promotion or I want to move up, but now what do I do? How do I build these
Yeah,
connections? And I'm like, well, I mean, obviously the best time to have planted a tree, right? The old saying is like 5 years ago, but the second best
exactly.
time is right now. So let's do it. And so the process is very similar though, right? It's identify who is in the organization, look at the org chart, figure out what teams you want to be on, figure out, strategically where you'd want to move, and then start talking to those people. And the question always becomes like, how do I talk to these people? Like, do I make it like low key? Do I make it very professional? Do I make it about me? Do I make it about them? Do I make it about the role? Do I make it about the business? Like, what are the topics that typically come up in, or that you encourage people to sort of lean into in their conversations once they're in the meetings?
I think that it's really important to prep for those meetings before they even begin. And so reaching out to someone just to reach out to someone is a waste of their time, and nobody's got time to be wasted. So being really thoughtful and coming in with, 3 to 5 questions. Obviously, people like to talk about themselves. So if it's your first time meeting someone, ask them, a little bit about themselves and how the departments collaborate with each other, and potentially, it sounds cheesy, but what does success look like? How can I best help support you? So say for example, since you say you sometimes work with earlier careers, say it's a paralegal who's working with an attorney, right? How do you like your schedule to be organized? How do you like feedback to be given? Do you want confirmations of received every single time you send an email, or is that going to bog up your email? Those little details about people's personal preferences will make a difference on how they enjoy working with you and what you will be tapped for in the future. And so regardless of the industry or the level, the same applies. Figuring out how people want to be treated is important, and little touches like you can even ask a question, you can throw in there something personal. Like in some of the conversations that have come up personally with me in my past is I show dogs, and for some reason pets kind of always open things up. I've got a girlfriend who loves to bake, and she always says, oh well, I love to bake, what's your favorite treat, so at the holiday party I can keep it in mind. And she'll take down these notes about different people and store it someplace, so that way when it comes time to that person getting a promotion, if they said that they liked brownies, bring in some brownies to congratulate them. And that those little details with those questions that you ask, whether that be personal or professional in terms of how the roles work together and how to best collaborate with each other, is going to make the difference on someone really, really appreciating you, or someone disliking you to the point of not promoting you within the organization or sponsoring your promotion, or just being completely ignored and not even knowing you exist. Because it's not anyone's responsibility to know you, it's your responsibility to be known. And so that takes intentional thought. And so coming prepared with questions that are related to making your work more meaningful, more successful, more collaborative is important. And so it's kind of hard to say what specific questions, because everybody's roles are so different.
Yeah.
What do you tell people?
It is kind of a combination of the things that you've been saying. I think making it somewhat personal, and like throwing out those details. I love the example of the baking. I like wish I baked, like that'd be such a great thing. So I got to pick up new skills. Because it is one of those things, like that's that long-term, like team building thinking and mindset, right?
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating how, like, I think some people get really worked up in their head, or they're just like so focused on themselves, or they're so worried about how they look that they forget that it's not really about you at the end of the day. It's about how the team gels together, right? And
Yeah.
so, what I tend to see is folks will get really hyper focused on like wanting to tell their story and their background and a lot about where they're coming from and where they've worked. One of the comments that I got from someone I'm working with, she goes, I used to work at this company and this company. And I was chatting with one of like the VPs, and they were like, I didn't know you worked at all these great companies. And she's like, well, how do I make sure that everyone knows that I worked at these great companies? And I was like,
Yeah.
that's a fine line, right? Like if you just like try to jam it into every conversation, then you're like that person's like, I used to work at Facebook or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
I'm an
It,
Xer at this company. Well, then why
ex-
did you leave?
right. You got it in your like headline on LinkedIn so that everyone knows that you worked at Google 10 years ago. And like,